Video games are an incredibly unique art form, not only because they usually take longer to produce than any other forms of art. Between the coding, the storytelling, the animation, the mechanics, everything can take years, decades, in teams of hundreds of people to complete on time. And usually that doesn't even happen. But despite that, they can still have such deep and unique stories, and they're one of the most versatile art forms out there. There are games with deep and enriching stories like my GOAT, Red Dead Redemption, but there are also games with no stories at all, and they're played strictly for the experience, like games you can play with your friends, or games that just kill the time. And there's millions of examples in between. There's any genre you can imagine of video games exists now. And despite all of that, yes, they're getting even more popular by the year, and they're crazy popular as it stands, they are still consumed by far less people than things like movie and TV. So, when there's a game that is incredibly popular, that is incredibly detailed, incredibly culturally relevant, what do a lot of big studios with money have to say about that? Well, the answer is usually, let's turn it into a show. Let's turn it into a movie. That seems like an obvious answer, right? You see something that massive groups of people love. Why not take it to another medium that even more people can enjoy it there? And that has led to some very interesting projects over the last few decades. And starting with the infamous Super Mario movie, I know that wasn't the first video game adaptation, but it's the first notable one. There was a stigma put on video game adaptations for being what they were at the time, which was horrifically dog shit in almost every way. Whether they strayed too far from the game's experience or the general vibe or the story, for decades, anything that came out, a movie or show that was based on a video game, everyone, rightfully, most of the time, assumed that it was going to be horrible. Now, in recent years, we've kind of gotten over that with things like Arcane, The Last of Us, and the Super Mario movie, which, for very different reasons, were all very culturally relevant. They were all financial successes, and most importantly, they were all of generally good quality. We're kind of existing in this proverbial golden age of video game adaptations with all those projects I just mentioned, but how did we get here? What makes those different from the dogshit movies and shows of the past? Why are these successful while their predecessors flopped terribly? Well, that kind of comes down to what makes a good adaptation. I asked a few of my friends this. I've been friends with people who love video games my whole life. I love video games myself, so of course I have my own opinions, which you're going to hear in this video. But I knew that my take on this was not going to be the consensus. I know that I have some somewhat unique opinions when it comes to stuff like this, so I took a little bit of a poll, and the general answers I got surrounded the same thing, but they came at it from different angles. One friend I asked said, it doesn't need to be the most artistically great thing in the world as long as it's not so noticeably horrible, whether it's cringe acting, cringe writing. Those things need to be good enough, but in general, they need to make you feel like how you felt playing the game for the first time. The direct quote my friend said was, would the child I was when I played that game be enjoying the thing that I'm watching right now? And I think that's a great way to come at it. Another friend of mine came at it from the way of just the general vibe and ambiance of the game needs to be respected on the screen, right? If the general aura, let's use, of a game, or the general vibe or tone of a setting in a video game is not translated to the screen, then the experience of the game will not be translated well to the screen itself. That friend specifically is a big fan of horror, so obviously he is very into the ambiance, the tension, the thrilling nature of it all. That if a video game that is very tense, very dramatic, very dark, and has very unique and very recognizable aura and vibe, and that's not reflected on the screen, then it's not going to feel like the same thing, and you're going to end up with what you got with those old Mario Brothers movies where they're just fighting random people in New York in the sewers for little to no reason. I was going to say that's interesting, but it's not really, and it's definitely not Mario. You know what I'm saying? That's what makes the game recognizable. You have to, the atmosphere, the feeling of being inside that game needs to be respected, or it won't come off right. And the third friend I asked, when asking him, what do you look for when a video game adaptation is announced, or what are you expecting of it, his exact quote was, I'm looking for it to be canceled. And I knew this friend would react that way, and that's why I asked this guy in particular. He then explained on his point of that if you're adapting a story that already exists, and if a game is popular enough to be adapted, it's usually already pretty great. So if you're taking this story that is already great and has already been done well, why are you trying to do it again? Because that really only leads you to two paths, both of which we're going to get into detail with in this video. but it really only leads you in two ways. One, you're just retelling the story in a different way, in a way that's going to be much shorter because video games take dozens and dozens, if not hundreds of hours to complete. And movies are at most 3 hours, and even those are like the big blockbuster, either Oscar bait movies or Avatar movies or whatever else James Cameron wants to do. And even then, 3 hours versus 40 hours isn't even considered a long video game. 40 hours is considered medium to short. And there's a 37-hour discrepancy there. It's just not going to reflect. The small details are what makes a game so personal, and that word personal is a major thing for video games, in my opinion. You're not just playing a story that someone else wrote. A lot of the time, yes, you are, but because of the choices you make, the areas that you go to, the things you do specifically when you're not in a cutscene, that's what makes it your version. That's what makes it a personal experience for you, and that is what can lead to you loving a game so much. I harp on Red Dead Redemption all the time, and I'm going to continue to do so. I have put close to 300 hours into Red Dead Redemption 2. I am confident I have not found everything to do in that game. I know there are still people I haven't talked to. I know there are still inches of the map that I have not scoured. I know there are still collectibles or legendary animals that I have not found. And that's not because I don't want to. I don't have a necessary drive to 100% the game. It's just because I haven't ended up doing it in any of my playthroughs. But the things that I did do made those playthroughs unique. Whenever you go onto a video or a Twitter thread of someone talking about Red Dead 2, they always refer to Arthur Morgan as My Arthur. My Arthur got fat so I could run around looking like a freaky little dwarf. I don't know why I use that example, but I've seen that more than once. But it feels like a very personal thing. This is the story that I made, and it leads you to relate to the main character of whatever game you're playing as, even if the main character is established as someone else. A more recent and even more strict example of this is Dispatch, a game that I love. Dispatch is a game about Robert Robertson, a pre-established character, and 80% of the game is laid out in front of you. Yes, there are 4 different endings and a bunch of alternate dialogues, but at the end of the day, there's only about 3 things you can control in that game. And it still feels like a very personal experience, whether you're playing it as what you would do in his shoes, or if you're playing it as what you think the character of Robert Robertson would do. This is a pre-established person, a pre-established character, interacting with only pre-established characters, written by someone else entirely, and yet it still feels personal because you are given the time to exist in that universe and the time to make choices in that universe, and that makes it feel even closer to home. Movies and TV have a very difficult time pulling that off because you're not entirely meant to relate to the character as if it was you. You're meant to relate to that character as if it's that character specifically. You're meant to feel things for that character, not feel as if that character is you, if that makes sense. It's a little bit of a difference in storytelling that these two mediums have, and that's where I think a lot of problems can come from in adapting a video game. And I'm straying from what I wanted the main point of this video to be, but circling it all back around as to what makes a good adaptation. Well, in the examples I used, Mario, the Super Mario movie, shows that whimsy. It shows that general closeness to the game. I would say that the kid I was when I played Super Mario Sunshine and Super Mario Galaxy would have loved the Super Mario Bros. Movie even more than I liked the movie when I watched it as an adult. It's very whimsical. It fits the vibe. It made me laugh. It made kids laugh a hell of a lot more than it made me laugh. And there's things like The Last of Us, where the atmosphere and the vibe is very similar to that of the game. The story is relatively similar, at least in the first season. The second season, there's a whole conversation to be had there, and I'm not an expert on it, so I'm not going to be the one to have that. But in general, it feels like you felt when you played the game. It feels like the same universe. It feels like the same people. It feels like the same things are happening. The tension of this global apocalypse and this one way to save it all is felt in the show. And Arcane kind of reflects what my third friend was talking about. Arcane, if you didn't know, and forgive me for telling this to you if you didn't, is based on a game called League of Legends. League of Legends is not a story game. It is not a game with a story. It is a multiplayer MOBA game in which there are paragraphs of lore for each character. Arcane, the show, is essentially an original story based around a few paragraphs of lore from certain characters and then their character designs that are put into the show from the game, and even those are altered to a decent extent. Arcane works because it is, respectfully, fucking nothing like League of Legends. If it was anything like League of Legends, you would have wanted to give yourself a lobotomy 30 minutes in and then never touch it again, and then end up touching it like 2 days later anyway. But I digress. Arcane works because it's not trying to follow the story of something that exists that people have already experienced. Arcane works because they built an original story around these little crumbs that they were given. And that goes into what my friend was saying. That's why he thinks Arcane works so well, because it's not trying to fuck with something that already exists like Final Fantasy movies do. There's already a great story that exists in games like Final Fantasy. Don't try to mess it up or abridge it or shorten it or chop it up to put it on a screen because you think it'll reach a wider audience. It's pointless, not only because if it's that bad and it's going to end up being worse in quality if you do all that to it, it's only going to make people respect that game and gaming as a whole less. So if you don't come at it with a unique perspective, then it's not worth it to do it. And I understand there are games that we're going to get into that are not able to be adapted under that rule. If you're not able to come at it with a unique point of view in a way that does not fuck with the original story or simply retell it as if it's a Disney Channel live action remake, then you shouldn't really be doing it at all. And I think that's the problem that we've kind of run into in 2025. Spoiler alert, I know that's the name of the video, but video game adaptations that happened last year, now it's January 2nd as of filming this, kind of faltered from what they were in the last couple years before that. And I believe that's because they went a little too far over the lines that I had already talked about. And what better way to start than what ended up being a cultural juggernaut in the Minecraft?
I am Steve.
Is a Minecraft movie a good adaptation? No. Is it a good movie? No. To me, the Minecraft movie really does nothing. I know that sounds harsh, but outside of having solid effects and making 10-year-olds laugh, which does have merit, it's not a bad thing. You know, if you can make something that people enjoy, no matter who it is, you've done something successful. But outside of that, to me, the Minecraft movie does really nothing that you would want it to. It's not a good movie on its own. You know, the writing is not great, the dialogue is not great. None of the acting is really phenomenal, which is surprising because most of the people in that movie have been great elsewhere, whether it's Peacemaker or School of Rock or, to an extent, Aquaman. Everyone in the cast of that movie, except for the 10-year-old boy who leads it, which I'm assuming he'll do better things than this, it's kind of hard not to. Everyone in the cast of that movie has done something really good before, including the director. The director made Napoleon Dynamite. That's one of my favorite comedy movies ever. But in this, it's really just nothing, you know? It's not even like it's exceptionally bad. The writing, I think, is exceptionally bad, but everything else is just kind of, like I said, it's really nothing, man. There's no nothing exceptional about this movie. Nothing even average, I would say. But in terms of it being a good adaptation, and it being a good movie are not necessarily the same thing. You can adapt something and it still not be good, right? But does it adapt Minecraft well? Also, no. You can kind of replace the word Minecraft with anything, and it doesn't change. The only thing that's really reliant on it being a Minecraft movie is that Jack Black screams a new vocab word every 3 minutes. If you just made him stop doing that and then replaced the game Minecraft with some random fucking fictional sandbox game that you made up for the movie, then it doesn't really change. The story doesn't change. It's really just what Jack Black says, and that's it. Nothing else would change about this movie. Does it capture the spirit or the atmosphere of the game? I would say no, because how can you capture the spirit of Minecraft? I made a whole video about Minecraft a couple videos ago, but a couple videos for me is like fucking 8 months, so apologies on that again. But it's an incredibly difficult game to capture in anything other than just playing the game, because Minecraft is such a deeply personal experience. My experience with Minecraft is not the same as yours or anyone else watching, and vice versa. Yes, you're dealing with the same things, same materials, same mobs, same general things to do, but it's a sandbox game. There's no story. There's achievements, yeah, but you're not hunting for those. You're just playing the game. You're not even always trying to survive. You're trying to build things and creative. You're trying to do certain things there, other biomes. It's everything. It's all expansive. It's one of the most unique video games ever made and one of the most special video games ever made. And that's why the cultural impact it's had has been so massive throughout its entire run, or most of its entire existence at least. And the movie really gets none of that. It doesn't really capture the creativity. They say the word creativity a lot, but they don't really show why it's meaningful. They show different biomes, but like 2 of them. They show villages. They show the Nether. They show zombies and skeletons and Enderman for one scene. They show a chicken jockey, but it just all kind of comes off to me as like, I don't know if soulless is the right word to use on a video game adaptation, especially a Minecraft one led by Jack Black that is very plainly marketed to 10-year-olds. But it does. It just feels like you're kind of throwing shit at a wall just to say like, oh, I know people recognize this. People are going to like this one. But it's not put there for a reason. You're just kind of flinging it up there, you know what I mean? If you're going to shit on a wall, at least make it look like something you're supposed to care about. And that's my thing, I think, with the Minecraft movie. It comes off as like they didn't try all that hard. And I know I'm overanalyzing a movie that I just admitted is made for 10-year-olds. But when your movie watches the same as like a YouTube video that a couple of real 10-year-olds could make, but instead of it being on YouTube, it's in every theater of America, and it costs $200 million to make, and it was marketed everywhere you look for months, they come off a little differently. So yes, Minecraft was a financial success, the Minecraft movie, I mean. It was a cultural success in that, for better or worse, people couldn't stop talking about it for a while. But was it good? No. It very much feels like a video game movie of the late 90s or early 2000s, and by that I mean it's not good and people are not gonna remember it. And it's 2 days into 2026, and the relevancy of the Minecraft movie I feel like died quite a bit ago. And I know we're in a new era. It's the information age. It's the age of the internet, TikTok, Twitter, Instagram Reels. Point being, things move a lot faster now, especially on the internet. So, yeah, trends and the public zeitgeist is going to move on from things a lot faster. But with that said, I think the Minecraft movie died out even quicker than you think it would have in this era. Now, with all that being said, no, I don't think the Minecraft movie is a good adaptation, nor do I think it's all that enjoyable of a movie. And I know what you're saying. You're holding this children's movie to the standard that you really shouldn't be. This is made for kids, very obviously marketed for kids. Why are you saying it needs great writing and it needs to be enjoyable? Because kids' movies can still be good. You know what I'm saying? Pixar movies, Disney movies, a bunch of DreamWorks movies, just because they're made and mainly marketed towards children just as much as the Minecraft movie was, does not mean they can't be good pieces of media. And so I think it's absolutely fair to hold it to that standard. And it is definitely fair to hold it to the standard of its game that it's adapting. Minecraft is a very enjoyable thing. It's a very culturally relevant thing that entire different generations of people have come to enjoy at this point. So when the movie is not written well, not acted well, it really doesn't even respect the spirit of the game in the sense that it's kind of just throwing the fucking words at you and hoping that you're like, whoa, chicken jockey, yeah. I made that joke twice in this video. I'm kind of disappointed. But yeah, it doesn't capture the spirit of the game. It doesn't capture what it's like to play it. It doesn't really respect where it came from. And it's just not all that enjoyable. So as a whole, I think it was kind of a step back for Adaptations, and in a disappointing way because it's based off of such an important game. If Minecraft doesn't exist, there are a million kids, I'm sure, much more than that even, who never get into video games entirely. So yeah, it sucks that Minecraft movie ended up as it is. Although, I know what the argument is, well, how are you going to adapt Minecraft if not in this way because everyone has such a different experience with it? Well, the easy answer to that question is you don't. It probably shouldn't have been attempted in the slightest, and the only reason it was because of the result that it got. It made a shit ton of money for a lot of people. So, that's why it happened. I don't think it should have happened, and I think it was a pretty big step back that it did happen. Now, this next one that we're going to talk about, I probably have a little bit more to say about, or at least a little bit more meaningful things to say about, but it's also a little bit more of a recent one.
Maybe not.
Five Nights at Freddy's 2 came out this year, last month. That's the most notable thing that I can say about it, if I'm being honest. It's nowhere near as bad as the Minecraft movie. Is it good? No, I would still say no. I think I gave it like a 4 out of 10 that night that I watched it with my friends. But no, it's not very good. I will say the first half is something. The atmosphere is cool. The vibes and the tension it's building is cool. The story it's starting to set up is interesting enough. And the continuation off of the story of the first movie is at least notable. There's something there to chew on. The back half of that movie, however, throws pretty much all of that in the garbage, in the vein of, like the Minecraft movie, fucking throwing fan service at the wall and just seeing if people get it. And based on the reaction of the hardcore Five Nights at Freddy's fans that have watched the movie, it kind of worked, which kind of sucks. Because Five Nights at Freddy's is such an interesting story, and it deserves to be adapted well, and I think this is a game that specifically is positioned to be adapted well because no one fucking knows the story of these games. Even the people who are hardcore dedicated to this fan base and to this game and spend 50 to 100 hours a year watching or making videos about what the story of this game could be, even they have disagreements amongst themselves about key points of the lore. No one fucking knows what these games are about. Even the creator himself has admitted that he doesn't know some of the answers. So this is a uniquely positioned game to be adapted using most of the key points that make the story good from what we know and filling in the gaps to make it even better. The movies don't do that, however. They opt for the more, let's keep this child friendly so that the parents will bring kids that know about this game to the theater. Which I get. They want to make money. They don't want to make this freaky horror thing about a serial killer father who stuffs toddlers and animatronics for a decade and a half. That's fucking weird, frankly. But the alternative they went with specifically is, let's not tell the original story. Let's remix all of the elements together and see what comes out. At least that was the approach in the first movie, between Vanessa and Mike Schmidt existing in the same space, and Vanessa being William Afton's daughter. And spoiler alert, I guess, for both Five Nights at Freddy's movies, if that matters to you. But they kind of put their own spin on the story, which in the first movie I feel like worked. I feel like it respected the story enough and remixed it enough to keep it fresh, and it kind of balanced out that targeting of being targeted to people who watch the movies. There's enough to keep them interested and keep them engaged, and being able to tell the story to people who have not played the games. Granted, in the first movie, it really felt like they were spoon-feeding the story right to the people who didn't know what they were looking at. In the second movie, it is almost exclusively targeted at people who know the games. And to a certain extent, that can be interesting because you're able to do a lot more things, you're able to reference a lot more things, you're able to set some things up and have your audience recognize it easier. On the other end, the vast majority of people who walk into this movie are going to be confused about fucking 80% of the shit that happens. Even I love the games. I am deep in the lore. I've watched as many videos as you can without watching all of them. And there was shit in there that I'm sitting there like, what the fuck is this, dude? And there's points where it's like so obvious they're trying to reel the hardcore fans back in. Like there's a scene where someone straight up looks at the camera and says, "I'm Michael Afton," and then smirks. And then you don't see him again until like the end of the movie. But I will say this. Is Five Nights at Freddy's 2 a good movie? No. I don't think the acting is great. The writing is bad. The story is weird. And the entire second half is a mess. But is it a good adaptation? I'm going to say yes. Now, I know I said earlier that to be a good adaptation, you have to be at least somewhat enjoyable. And I believe that this movie the first half is enjoyable enough. But Five Nights at Freddy's 2 is a good adaptation in the sense that it does represent the game. It adapts the game. It feels the same. Not in the best way, because if you've played a Five Nights at Freddy's game or watched a video about Five Nights at Freddy's, you'll kind of come away thinking, oh, that was something. The atmosphere was cool. It was dark. It was gritty. There was some tension. The story was weird. I don't really know what's going on. And in general, I'm pretty confused. That's kind of how you're going to feel walking out of this movie, if I'm being honest with you. Not for the same reasons, but you're going to walk out thinking, oh, the atmosphere was cool enough. The set design was cool. The story was weird, and I don't really know what was happening. Even though I know what I'm supposed to know is happening. It's the same. You feel the same as the game in that way, for better or for worse. And it's still not. It's really just still not there. I think this could have been great, and I know they set up for a third one. And I know people keep saying, like, oh, like, wasn't it cool to see the Springtrap reference? Wasn't it cool to see Circus Baby? Wasn't it cool for them to set up FNAF 3? Not when they say word for word, hey, let's steal this working animatronic for our haunted house that we're going to make. What? It's just... I get where it's coming from. I do. And I don't mean to be, like, shitting in the kids' pool, taking a dump in the shallow end or however you want to put it, but just because you did it doesn't mean it's good. Like, you have to do it well. That's what I'm saying. I don't think it's a great adaptation. I think it's good enough as an adaptation, but it is not good enough as an overall movie. It is all over the place, and it tries to tie it all together by explaining the story of this movie and the next movie to you with, like, straight up lines of dialogue. On top of that, the puppet doesn't make sense. The Michael Afton doesn't make sense. It's just a mess that it feels like it wants you to decipher it. It feels like it's trying to be one of the games. It's like when Hello Neighbor fucking begged MatPat to make a video about it. This is like begging YouTubers to make theories about this movie, it seems like. Not setting things up that's going to have any kind of interesting payoff, just asking questions or putting questions out there so the public gets stirred up about it. And it worked for a little bit, but like I said, this came out last month, and I don't even see people in the Five Nights at Freddy's community talking about it that much anymore. So, yeah, this kind of blurs the line between quality of project and quality of adaptation. Like, yeah, it has a lot of the stuff from the games in it. It makes fans of the game generally happy. But it itself isn't good, and in my opinion, it doesn't even use the elements that it takes from the games all that well. It's just kind of... I will say it tries. Where the Minecraft movie seems like no one really tried to make it all that great, you can tell that there was effort put into Five Nights at Freddy's 2. It just wasn't correctly, in my opinion. It wasn't in the right areas, or they didn't use these tools they had in the right way, but they did use them. They did make an attempt, which I'll give it credit for, and I do think the first half is really interesting. I like the tension. I like the atmosphere. I like the way it builds off the story from the first one. So, are we in hell? If these are the two most popular video game adaptations of the year, are we regressing entirely? Are we going back to square one, where the best things that video game fans have to see at the theaters is Jack Black screaming chicken jockey and crafting table into the camera, or a creepy looking guy saying his name and his father's name and his plan to, I'm gonna uphold my father's way and kill the whole town, also right into the camera, and being the most spoon-fed bullshit you can see? No, not all the way at least. There is one more that I want to talk about, and it will build on the point of what I think can make a good adaptation.
That make you feel so good? You want to make my cock explode now? What? Sorry, intercourse?
I know Fallout Season 2 has only been out for 3 episodes, and it's going to go quite a few weeks into 2026, but it started in 2025, and it's really the only third notable one that we've got, so I want to talk about it. Fallout Season 2 is a good show on its own. And I know there's a lot of Fallout fans who like compare it strictly to the story of New Vegas and love to tear it to shreds. But that's more of a fringe group at this point anyways. Fallout Season 2 is a well-written piece of TV. So is Season 1 for what it's worth. The acting is good. The writing is pretty good. The story is honestly really engaging, really interesting. A lot of the character work, especially with the ghoul, is really nice. The effects are great. Everything looks great. It does feel like the apocalypse, so it hits on that atmosphere point that I was talking about earlier. Excuse me. And most importantly, it doesn't step on the spirit of the game. And how does it do that? It's because it's not a specific adaptation of any of the games. It's not adapting Fallout 4 or Fallout New Vegas to the screen. It's set in the same universe, but after all of the video games. For example, I believe it was Todd Howard that said that Fallout 5, the video game, is going to follow the events or follow up on the events of the show. So this isn't as much an adaptation of a specific video game as it is an entry into a series that up to this point has strictly been video games. Fallout on Amazon Prime is the next story being told in this universe. It's not trying to adapt anything like Five Nights at Freddy's 2 is, or like things like The Last of Us are. It's its own thing set in a universe that is based on a game. It's using tools from the game, but unlike Five Nights at Freddy's, it's not using it to catapult Dookie onto the wall. It's using it to tell a new story that's going to lead into even more stories that will be in the games. That's why I think Fallout, the show, is a better adaptation and overall just a better product than the other two I've talked about. And I know what the argument's going to be. Oh, so 2 of them are meant for children, and one's meant for an adult, and you're an adult, and you like the one that's made for an adult, and you don't like the 2 that are made for children. Okay, yeah, asshole, so what? I would like them all to be good. I like all of these video games. I love Minecraft. I love Five Nights at Freddy's. I love Fallout. So I would like for all of these adaptations to represent these things that I love in ways that I also love. So yeah, it's going to be frustrating when these projects come out, and one of them is a total nothing burger. Another one has the second half of Doom, and the third one's actually pretty good. And the third one's the only one that's not being played in the movie theater, which I get. But I know I barely talked about Fallout, but I love that show, and I can make a whole video on that later. We'll see. But I do genuinely love the show. I watch it every week on Wednesday when it comes out, so I'm really excited to see more of that. But what the fuck did I do all this for? Why did I make this whole video? Just to shit on Minecraft and Freddy Fazbear? No, I love Frederick Fazbear. I made this video to map out what a good adaptation can be. As I started out talking about, there are quite a few lines that I think you have to follow to be considered a good adaptation while still being a good piece of media. I think Fallout does that, but how does it do that? It doesn't take something that you already love and mash it up and abridge it and throw it onto a screen for 2 hours or even a full season of TV. The Last of Us does it in a really unique way. The Last of Us tells a story that was already told in the video game through the series of a TV show, through a one season, and it tells it well. Yes, it cuts things out. Yes, it adds things, but I think it makes it better in some regards. Some regards, not all of it. Yes, it makes it less personal. However, you still care very deeply for those characters. So, here are my rules, and of course there's exceptions to every rule, so there's going to be exceptions to these. Here are my lines for what it takes to make a good video game adaptation. Do not adapt video games that have player characters. Do not adapt video games that have self-insert characters, or you make your own guy, or you design your own. No, none of that. You know why? Because if you make a game based off of that, like Minecraft, which I know you play as Steve, or you play as Alex, but it's you. There's no dialogue. This is you in Minecraft. There's no character other than his little blocky shirt. None of that. Don't do that, because you're going to end up with Jack Black Steve. It's just Jack Black acting like what the public thinks Jack Black is, dressed in a Steve-colored sweater and jeans. That's all it is. It's not a character. It's like he is a marketing device as the secondary main character of the movie. You can't have that. Real established characters only. You can only really adapt games that have established characters, that have characters that you know already, that have notable traits. They have their own character sheet, they have their own background, they have their own personality. Only use that, because you can translate that character to the screen and still make them a sympathetic figure, still make them relatable, still make them a good and interesting person to watch, and you don't have to rely on the audience inserting themselves into their shoes as they did in games. Also, do your best to stay away from the exact story of the game. Because odds are, if a game is good enough to get a movie adaptation, the story was already done really well. Don't try and do the same thing again. Because even if you do, what's the goal there? I know the real answer. It's because whatever studio gave it the green light wants to make a bunch of money. But as a creative, the goal there is just so more people can see it. Like, if you love this so much, you genuinely think you're going to do a better job of it. I understand that to some level. But, you know, I love writing things. I'm not a creative by any means, but I would never say that I could do a better job at making the story of any of my favorite games. So is the golden goose of video game adaptations like a game that's kind of broken and people don't like that much but has an interesting story? Maybe. Yeah, I don't know. No one's going to try that because no studio is ever going to give that the green light because it's going to make no money. At the end of the day, man, video game adaptations are always going to be around. Like, unironically, the Mario movie making $1 billion gave video game adaptations like 10 years of leeway. I'm not going to lie, by itself. And that's not even talking about how well Fallout's doing, how well Arcane did. Super Mario Galaxy, the movie, comes out next April. That's going to make another fucking $1 billion, I'm sure. And then it's going to get another decade of leeway after that. So these things are not going away, for better or for worse. And the Minecraft movie being so successful might lead us into more things like that, where a studio is going to say, hey, this game is popular. What if we point a camera at someone saying words from that game for 90 minutes and then put that in an IMAX theater? Sounds like $600 million in the bank to me. I hope that doesn't happen, obviously, because video games are, like I started this video with, an incredibly unique and personal art form that can create such detailed and complex stories. And I think those stories, if they're not going to be told in a meaningful way on a bigger screen, leave them to the game. Video games are not a lesser form of art simply because they're not made by a studio or filmed on a lot. They are one of the most unique ways and most important ways to tell a story. You're not improving anything by making it from a game into a movie. There are plenty of games that have phenomenal voice acting, phenomenal animation, phenomenal writing, phenomenal mechanics, phenomenal directing, the framing, the blocking of cutscenes, and even just the world in general is designed beautifully. Making something from a video game into anything else does not inherently make it better. And in a lot of ways, it makes it worse because you're taking away from what made that so good. So, what's the thesis of this video? Or I guess this is the end, so the conclusion. If you're not sure you can make something great out of the crumbs of a game you're given, let it be great. You don't need to explain why the story is amazing. Let it be amazing. 2025 was not a phenomenal year for video game adaptations. Let's hope 2026, with the rest of Fallout and with the Super Mario Galaxy movie, can be better. And I know that I haven't been on this channel for a while, but let me tell you, nothing makes you want to be creative more than retail wage work. So hopefully I'll be seeing you guys again real soon. Thanks for watching.